Ove been sitting there, checking your phone, replaying conversations, wondering when he'll call. But here's the truth. Your life is too valuable to be put on pause for someone else's decision. The moment you stop waiting is the moment you take your power back. When you shift your focus from him to yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to grow, to glow, to live again. And ironically, that's when he notices. Not because you're chasing him, but because you're no longer available to be chased. Energy changes when you stop waiting. You become magnetic, not desperate. You've been sitting there checking your phone more times than you'd like to admit, rereading old messages, analyzing every word, every pause, every last scene. It feels like your whole mood depends on whether his name lights up your screen. That's not love. That's emotional dependence quietly taking control of your peace. And the truth is, the more you wait, the more you shrink your own life to fit into someone else's uncertainty. You start delaying your happiness, postponing your plans, and putting your energy into something that may not even come back the way you expect. The moment you decide to stop waiting, everything begins to shift inside you. You realize that your time is valuable, your energy is limited, and your life cannot revolve around someone who isn't showing up consistently. Instead of waking up and reaching for your phone, you start reaching for your purpose. You begin to invest in yourself, your goals, your health, your mindset. You reconnect with the things that once made you feel alive before this person became your focus. And slowly, you start to feel like yourself again, not someone who is constantly hoping, but someone who is actively living. There's a different kind of confidence that comes when you stop waiting. It's quiet, it's grounded, and it doesn't beg for attention. It shows in the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, and the way you no longer feel the need to chase validation. You stop overthinking your worth because you understand that the right person doesn't need to be convinced to choose you. This shift is powerful because it changes the energy you give off. You're no longer coming from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance. And here's what most people don't realize. When you stop waiting, you break the pattern. You're no longer predictable, no longer always available, no longer emotionally on standby. That change doesn't just impact you, it creates a ripple effect. The attention you once gave away so freely is now directed toward building a better version of yourself. You become more focused, more attractive, more fulfilled, not because you're trying to get him back, but because you're finally choosing yourself over the waiting game. You've been present, consistent, always just a message away, and while that might feel like loyalty, it can quietly remove the sense of mystery that naturally builds attraction. When someone knows you'll always be there no matter what, they stop questioning your presence. There's no gap, no space, no reason for them to wonder about you. And without that sense of wonder, emotional urgency fades. But the moment you step back, something subtle yet powerful begins to shift. Your absence starts to speak in ways your constant presence never could. When you're no longer the one reaching out, no longer the one keeping conversations alive, he begins to notice the silence. At first, it might confuse him. He may even assume you're busy or distracted. But as that silence continues, curiosity starts to grow. He begins to replay moments, think about your energy, your attention, the way you used to show up. Questions form in his mind. Why the sudden change? What are you doing now? Who has your attention instead? And that curiosity can quickly turn into a desire to reconnect, not because you asked for it, but because he felt the difference. Human nature responds to contrast. When something that was once constant suddenly isn't, it becomes more noticeable. Your absence creates that contrast. It reminds him of what he had access to and what is no longer as easily available. And in that realization, value can increase. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped overgiving and started protecting your energy. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're allowing him to recognize it on his own. This shift also changes how he perceives you. Instead of someone who is always waiting, you become someone who has options, priorities, and a life that doesn't revolve around him. That perception alone can spark attraction. People are naturally drawn to what feels slightly out of reach, to what isn't fully predictable or guaranteed. Your absence creates that feeling, not through manipulation, but through self-respect. And while he's processing this change, something even more important is happening. You're reclaiming your time and emotional space. You're no longer caught in the cycle of waiting and wondering. Instead, you're creating a life that feels full on its own. So whether he reaches out or not, you're no longer operating from a place of need. You've shifted the dynamic simply by choosing not to always be there. And that's where curiosity turns into action. Detachment is where everything changes, but not in the way most people think. It's not about pretending you don't care or forcing yourself to be cold. It's about reaching a point where your emotional stability is no longer tied to someone else's behavior. Right now, every small action from him, whether he replies, ignores, calls, or disappears, has the power to affect your mood. That's not control, that's dependence. And detachment is the process of taking that control back without needing to cut off your feelings completely. When you begin to detach, you stop overanalyzing every little detail. You stop asking why he hasn't called yet, what he's thinking, or what you did wrong. Instead, your focus shifts inward. You start asking better questions. What do I need? What do I deserve? What kind of energy am I allowing into my life? That shift alone creates emotional strength. Because now, instead of reacting to him, you are responding to yourself. You become less impulsive, less anxious, and far more grounded in who you are. There's a calm confidence that comes with detachment. It's not loud, it doesn't seek validation, and it doesn't chase reassurance. It simply exists. When you're detached, you no longer feel the urge to double text, to explain yourself unnecessarily, or to prove your worth. You understand that your value is not something that needs to be negotiated or earned through effort. It's already there. And anyone who doesn't recognize it is simply not aligned with you. What makes detachment so powerful is that it changes the dynamic without you having to say a word. When you're no longer emotionally reactive, the other person can feel it. Your energy becomes steady instead of unpredictable. You're not easily triggered, not easily pulled into emotional highs and lows. That stability is rare, and it naturally draws attention. Because now, instead of trying to hold on, you've become someone who can walk away if necessary. And that possibility alone creates respect. At the same time, detachment frees you from the fear of outcomes. Whether he calls or doesn't call, you're no longer stuck in anticipation. You're living your life without constantly checking for signs or waiting for validation. You give yourself the closure you were once hoping to get from him. And in doing so, you become emotionally independent. That independence is what makes you powerful, because now your happiness is no longer something someone else controls. When your focus is locked on whether he notices you, texts you, or chooses you, you slowly begin to measure your worth through his actions. Every delay feels like rejection, every short reply feels like disinterest, and every silence feels personal. That's how self-worth gets replaced by external validation without you even realizing it. You start performing instead of being, trying to say the right things, act the right way, and keep his attention at any cost. But the truth is, the more you rely on someone else to feel valuable, the more power you give them over your emotions. The shift begins when you turn that focus back onto yourself. Instead of asking why he isn't giving you attention, you start asking why you're accepting so little of it. That question changes everything. You begin to see your value not through his effort, but through your own standards. You recognize that your time, your energy, your presence, these are things that matter. And not everyone deserves access to them. This awareness builds a different kind of confidence, one that doesn't need approval to exist. As you start investing in yourself, your priorities naturally change. You spend less time waiting and more time building. Whether it's your goals, your career, your health, or your mindset, you begin creating a life that feels meaningful on its own. And the more fulfilled you feel within yourself, the less you crave attention from someone who isn't consistent. You're no longer trying to fill a gap because there is no gap. You're already whole. This is where your energy becomes different. You're not seeking validation anymore. You're embodying value. And people can feel that. There's a noticeable shift when someone knows their worth. They don't chase, they don't beg, and they don't settle. They simply allow the right people to meet them at their level. That kind of energy is naturally attractive, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're no longer trying at all. And here's the irony. When you stop needing his attention, that's often when it shows up. Not because you forced it, but because your absence of need creates space for genuine interest. But by that point, your mindset has already evolved. You're no longer impressed by attention alone. You're paying attention to consistency, effort, and respect. You're no longer asking if he likes you. You're asking if he deserves you. Trying to force someone to call, text, or come back into your life is like trying to control the wind. It only leaves you exhausted and frustrated. The more you push, the more resistance you create. When you keep reaching out, over-explaining, or trying to stay on his mind, it can actually have the opposite effect. It removes the natural space where interest has a chance to grow on its own. Real connection doesn't need pressure to survive. If anything, pressure suffocates it. When you step back and allow things to unfold naturally, you remove that pressure completely. You're no longer trying to control the timing, the outcome, or his behavior. Instead, you're allowing him the freedom to show you exactly where he stands without interference. This is important because it reveals the truth. If he wants to call, he will. If he misses you, he'll act on it. And if he doesn't, then you're no longer wasting energy trying to convince someone to do something. They're not choosing on their own. There's a quiet strength in letting things be. It shows that you trust yourself enough not to chase what isn't clearly choosing you. You're not sitting around hoping anymore. You're simply observing. You're paying attention to actions instead of getting caught up in potential or mixed signals. This mindset protects your emotional energy because you're no longer investing blindly. You're allowing people to earn their place in your life through consistency, not just words or temporary attention. At the same time, you're creating a life that moves forward regardless of what he does. You're not pausing your happiness, your growth, or your plans just to see if he'll come back. You're building momentum in your own world. And that's what makes this so powerful. You're no longer stuck in waiting mode. You're in motion. You're evolving, improving, and becoming more aligned with what you truly deserve. And in that space, something interesting happens. If he does come back, it's not because you chased him, it's because he chose to. And that choice carries more weight because it was made freely. But even more importantly, you're no longer dependent on that outcome. Whether he returns or not, your life is still moving forward, your standards are still high, and your energy is still protected. Letting go feels uncomfortable at first because you've attached meaning, hope, and emotion to the outcome. It can feel like you're losing something important, like you're giving up on a possibility you believed in. But what's actually happening is a shift in direction. Instead of holding on to uncertainty, you're choosing clarity. Instead of staying stuck in emotional limbo, you're moving toward growth. That decision alone begins to elevate you, even if it doesn't feel like it right away. When you truly let go, you release the need to control how things turn out. You stop trying to predict his next move, stop waiting for the perfect message, stop hoping for a specific response. That mental space that was once filled with overthinking starts to open up. And in that space, you begin to rediscover yourself. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotions become more stable, and your energy is no longer drained by constant anticipation. There's a level of strength that comes from choosing peace over attachment. You're no longer holding on to someone who is inconsistent, hoping they'll suddenly change. You're accepting what is rather than chasing what could be. That acceptance doesn't weaken you, it grounds you. It allows you to stand firm in your standards and stop settling for less than you deserve. You begin to understand that your value doesn't decrease just because someone failed to recognize it. As you rise out of that waiting mindset, you start to see things differently. You become more aware of what healthy connection actually looks like: consistency, effort, respect, and genuine interest. You're no longer impressed by small gestures or temporary attention. You're looking for something real, something stable. And because you've experienced the alternative, you're less likely to tolerate anything that disrupts your peace again. This transformation isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, internal, and deeply powerful. It shows in the way you no longer chase, no longer beg, no longer question your worth. You move differently. You carry yourself with a sense of certainty that doesn't rely on anyone else's validation. And from that place, you don't just attract attention, attract alignment. People who meet you with the same level of respect, clarity, and intention that you now have for yourself.